My name is Mason Thompson, and at 29 I never expected to be disowned over $30,000. I was always the responsible one, saving money, building my career as a software engineer, making Grandpa Harold proud. That all changed the day I found that note taped to my apartment door. We are no longer family. All because I refused to fund my sister Stephanie's coffee shop dream. What my parents never saw coming was how their cruel rejection would backfire at Grandpa's 75th birthday party, when those 3 gift boxes changed everything forever. Before I get into this wild story, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want more stories about standing up for yourself even against family. I grew up in a modest neighborhood in the suburbs of Boston. Our house was nothing fancy. A 3-bedroom colonial with faded blue paint and a small backyard where Dad would grill on summer weekends. We were comfortable but definitely middle class. Mom taught elementary school and Dad worked as a sales manager for a local furniture company. From the outside, we probably looked like your typical American family, but beneath the surface there were always these subtle dynamics that only became glaringly obvious to me as I got older. My grandfather, Harold Thompson, was my hero from day one. Grandpa Harold had built a comfortable life through decades of smart decisions, hard work, and careful planning. He had retired from a successful career in banking and investments, though none of us knew exactly how successful until much later. Every Sunday when I was growing up, he would take me fishing at the lake near his house. Those quiet mornings on the water were when he would impart his wisdom about life, responsibility, and especially money. "Money is just a tool, Mason," he would say, reeling in his line. "It is not good or bad on its own. It just amplifies who you already are." I took those lessons to heart, opening my first savings account at 11 and getting my first job bagging groceries at 16. My sister Stephanie was a different story entirely. 2 years younger than me, she always had a knack for getting whatever she wanted. She was the baby of the family, the pretty one with her perfect blonde hair and winning smile. While I was saving up for college textbooks, Stephanie was maxing out her first credit card on clothes and concert tickets before she even graduated high school. The pattern started early. Stephanie would make a mess, financial or otherwise, and our parents would clean it up. She started 3 different college majors, psychology, marketing, and communications, never finishing any of them. Each time she dropped out, there was always a dramatic reason why it just wasn't right for her creative spirit. After college, or lack thereof, came a series of passion projects. There was the jewelry business that lasted 4 months before she got bored with making necklaces. Then the photography studio that closed after she realized professional photography required more than just Instagram filters. Each venture started with enthusiasm and ended with my parents writing checks to cover the losses. Meanwhile, I took a different path. I studied computer science, graduated with honors, and landed a solid job at a tech company in Boston. I lived below my means, contributed the maximum to my 401 Kelvin, and slowly built up a healthy savings account. By 29, I had saved enough for a down payment on a modest house and was carefully considering neighborhoods. I had been dating Audrey Collins for 2 years, a level-headed pediatric nurse who saw my family dynamic with crystal clarity from the very beginning. "Your parents have created 2 completely different sets of expectations," Audrey told me after observing one particularly tense family dinner. "They expect you to be completely self-sufficient while treating your sister like she will break if faced with real consequences." That dinner had been the first sign of the storm brewing on the horizon. It was just 3 months before everything fell apart. We were all gathered around my parents' dining table: Mom, Dad, Stephanie, her latest boyfriend, Ethan, Audrey, and me. Stephanie had been unusually excited, talking about various coffee shops she and Ethan had been visiting. "We are doing market research," she had said, with a wink, showing photos on her phone of elaborate latte art. Dad had beamed with pride. "That is my girl, always with an eye for opportunity." I caught Audrey's subtle eye roll and squeezed her hand under the table. We both knew what was coming. Another Stephanie special. A grand plan with no foundation. I just had no idea how deeply it would fracture our family. Grandpa Harold saw it too. He had joined us for dessert that evening, and I noticed him watching the interaction with a thoughtful expression. Later, as we helped clear the dishes, he pulled me aside. Sometimes, standing firm, is the greatest act of love, even when it feels like the opposite, he said cryptically. Remember that, Mason. I nodded, not fully understanding what he meant. It would be only a few weeks before his words made perfect sense. Looking back now, I can see all the red flags. The way my parents would gush over Stephanie's every impulsive idea while treating my stable career as simply expected. The way they would deflect when I brought up concerns about enabling her. The subtle dismissal whenever I achieved something through hard work. Well, things have always come easily to you, Mason. Nothing had ever come easily. I had simply worked hard, planned carefully, and made sacrifices. But in our family narrative, Stephanie was the creative dreamer who needed protection, and I was the practical one who needed no support. This imbalance had been manageable, even if frustrating for most of my adult life. But then came the coffee shop dream, and with it the ultimatum that would change everything. Stephanie's coffee shop obsession began suddenly the way all her passions did. One weekend, she and Ethan binged some Netflix documentary about third-wave coffee culture, and by Monday, they were self-proclaimed experts. Ethan had been dating my sister for about 8 months at this point. He was 30, worked sporadically as a freelance marketing consultant, and had the kind of confidence that came from never facing real consequences. Their plan, as they enthusiastically explained at a family dinner, was to open The Daily Grind, an artisanal coffee shop in downtown Boston that would revolutionize coffee culture in New England. Never mind that Boston already had dozens of excellent independent coffee shops. Never mind that neither of them had ever worked a day in food service. We will source directly from farmers in Colombia and Ethiopia, Stephanie explained, despite having no international business connections. And we will have a rotating gallery featuring local artists, Ethan added, though he knew no local artists. What they did have was a Pinterest board full of exposed brick walls and Edison bulb fixtures, and absolutely no business plan whatsoever. My parents ate it up. Dad talked about how entrepreneurial spirit ran in the family. It did not. Mom gushed about how she could see Stephanie on the cover of Boston Magazine's 30 Under 30 issue. I stayed quiet, pushing mashed potatoes around my plate, while Audrey squeezed my knee under the table. When Stephanie announced they were taking a research trip to Seattle to study the coffee capital of America, I finally spoke up. Have you done any financial projections? I asked. Commercial rent in downtown Boston is pretty steep. The table went quiet. Stephanie's smile faltered for just a second before Ethan jumped in. We are approaching this holistically, he said, which meant, no, they had not done any math at all. This is about creating an experience, not just crunching numbers. Dad shot me a warning look. Not everything is about spreadsheets, Mason. Sometimes you have to take risks to follow your dreams. The conversation moved on, but the tension remained. A week later, Stephanie and Ethan departed for their Seattle research trip, which, based on their Instagram feeds, consisted mostly of tourist activities and selfies with overpriced lattes. I tried to be supportive, despite my reservations. I even sent Stephanie links to small business resources and offered to help review their business plan when they created one. She left me on red. 3 days after they returned from Seattle, my doorbell rang at 9:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was already in sweatpants unwinding after a long day of debugging code when I found Stephanie and Ethan on my doorstep, both unusually dressed up. Surprise visit. Stephanie sang out, pushing past me into my apartment. We brought wine. Ethan followed with a bottle of something much more expensive than what I typically bought. I had a sinking feeling as I closed the door. We settled in my living room, them on the couch, me in my reading chair. Stephanie chatted animatedly about Seattle, how inspirational it had been, how clear their vision had become. I nodded along, waiting for the real reason for their visit. Finally, after their second glass of wine, Stephanie set down her glass and leaned forward. So we found the perfect location, she said, her voice taking on that sweet tone she used when she wanted something. It is an amazing space in Back Bay, close to the college crowds, but also the business district. That sounds expensive, I said carefully. Well, yes, quality comes at a price, Ethan chimed in. But the opportunity is incredible. The previous tenant is leaving at the end of the month, so we need to move fast. We already have most of what we need, Stephanie continued. Mom and Dad are helping with some of the startup costs, and Ethan's parents are contributing too. I nodded slowly, still waiting for the hammer to drop. But we are still about 30,000 short, she finally said, looking at me with wide, expectant eyes. And we immediately thought of you. You are always so good with money, and we know you have savings. There it was. The real purpose of the wine, the surprise visit, the flattery. You want me to lend you $30,000, I asked, just to be crystal clear. Not lend, invest, Ethan corrected enthusiastically. You would be a partner. A silent partner, of course, since you are busy with your job. But you would get a share of the profits. I took a deep breath. Have you created a business plan? Financial projections? What about your experience in the industry? Stephanie's smile tightened. We do not need all that corporate stuff. We have vision and passion. Stephanie, I cannot invest $30,000 based on vision and passion, I said, as gently as I could. That is a significant amount of money. But you have it, she pressed. I know you do. You are always saving. I have been saving for years to buy a house, I explained. And even if I had extra, I would need to see a solid business plan before investing in any business. The atmosphere in the room shifted. Stephanie's sweet demeanor evaporated, replaced by the entitled anger I had seen many times before. So you would rather buy yourself a house than help your own sister, she snapped. That is so selfish, Mason. I am happy to help in other ways, I offered. I could help you put together a business plan, or I could connect you with a friend who works in small business lending. Maybe I could contribute a smaller amount if you secure the rest through proper channels. Ethan scoffed. We do not need a handout. We thought you would be excited to be part of something special, but I guess you are too risk-averse. Stephanie was already standing up, gathering her purse. I cannot believe my own brother would not support me, after everything our family has done for you. What exactly had they done for me? I had worked for everything. I had paid my own way through college with scholarships and part-time jobs. But this was not the time to bring that up. Stéphanie Previn. Save it, she cut me off. You are going to regret not helping family when you had the chance. Just wait and see. They stormed out, Stephanie, slamming my door hard enough to make the pictures rattle on my walls. I sat in my quiet apartment, a sick feeling growing in my stomach. Something told me this was not going to blow over like our usual disagreements. I was right. 3 days of silence followed Stephanie's dramatic exit from my apartment. No calls, no texts, not even angry social media subtweets. The quiet was more unnerving than an immediate blowback would have been. Then on Saturday morning, my phone chimed with a text from my father, family meeting at our house. 2 p.m., be there. No explanation, no pleasantries. Just a summons. I called Audrey immediately, my stomach in knots. They are going to ambush me about this coffee shop money, I told her. Then do not go alone, she said firmly. I will come with you. I appreciated the offer, but something told me this needed to be handled within the family first. Let me see what happens. I will call you right after. When I arrived at my parents' house that afternoon, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Mom sat stiffly on the couch. Dad stood by the fireplace with his arms crossed, and Stephanie perched on the armchair looking simultaneously victimized and triumphant. No Ethan, interestingly. This was strictly family. Sit down, Mason, Dad said, gesturing to the lone chair positioned across from the three of them. The setup was not lost on me, them versus me. I sat, trying to keep my expression neutral. What is going on? Mom spoke first, her voice carrying that disappointed teacher tone she had perfected over decades in elementary education. Stephanie told us about your conversation the other night. We are very disappointed, Dad added. I looked between them. Because I would not give Stephanie $30,000 for a business with no plan. That seems like a reasonable financial decision to me. Stephanie's eyes welled with tears on cue. See how he twists everything. I was not asking him to just give me money. It was an investment opportunity for all of us. Dad stepped forward. Mason, your sister has found her passion. This coffee shop could set her up for life, give her stability and purpose. As her brother, you should want that for her. I do want that for her, I said carefully. But I want it to succeed, which means doing it the right way with proper planning, appropriate funding channels, and realistic expectations. Mom shook her head. You have always been so rigid, so unwilling to support your sister's dreams. That stung. I had spent years carefully avoiding criticizing Stephanie's impulsive decisions, offering help when I could, staying silent when I could not. But apparently drawing a boundary around my hard-earned savings made me the villain. I offered to help her create a business plan, I reminded them. I offered to connect her with proper financing options. I even offered a smaller amount if she could secure the rest through legitimate channels. We already told her we would make sure you helped, Dad said flatly. That stopped me cold. You what? We promised Stephanie you would contribute, Mom clarified. We know you have the money, Mason. You have always been so frugal. You promised my money to Stephanie without even asking me. I could not believe what I was hearing. Stephanie sniffled dramatically. We are family. Family supports each other. Family does not make financial commitments on behalf of other family members, I countered, feeling my temper rising. And family does not guilt each other into making poor financial decisions. Dad's face hardened. Is that what you think this is? A poor decision? Your sister finally finds something she is passionate about, and you dismiss it as a poor decision. Have either of you looked at their business plan, I asked. Their financial projections, their market analysis, their experience in the industry, because I asked for those things and they do not exist. Mom waved her hand dismissively. Details can be worked out later. What matters is supporting Stephanie now when she needs it. The conversation went in circles for nearly an hour. Me asking for basic business fundamentals, them insisting that family obligation trumped financial common sense. With each passing minute, I felt more isolated in that room, more certain that they had already decided I was wrong before I even arrived. Finally, Dad delivered the ultimatum that would change everything. Mason, he said, standing tall with his arms crossed. This family has always supported each other. Your mother and I have already committed to helping Stephanie with part of the startup costs. Your grandparents are contributing a small amount too. I doubted that last part. Grandpa Harold would never invest without a solid business plan, but I let it slide. Now it is your turn to step up, Dad continued. Either help your sister, or do not consider yourself part of this family. The words hung in the air like a physical thing. I stared at him, waiting for some sign that he was exaggerating, that he did not really mean to threaten our relationship over this. Are you serious right now? I finally asked. You are threatening to disown me if I do not give Stephanie $30,000. Do not be so dramatic, Mom sighed. No one is disowning anyone. We are simply saying that in this family we support each other. If you cannot do that, then perhaps you need to reconsider your priorities. I looked at each of them. Dad's stern face, Mom's disapproving frown, Stephanie's victorious smirk poorly disguised as sadness. In that moment, something broke inside me. My priorities are just fine, I said, standing up. I work hard, I plan carefully, I live responsibly, and I do not make financial commitments I cannot fulfill. If that makes me not part of this family, then maybe we have different definitions of what family means. I walked out, ignoring their calls to come back and be reasonable. The drive home was a blur, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Surely they would come to their senses. Surely this was just an emotional moment that would pass. But the days that followed proved me wrong. My calls went unanswered. My texts received single-word responses, or nothing at all. I tried reaching out to Mom directly, thinking she might be more reasonable, but her reply was chilling. When you are ready to apologize to your sister and fulfill your family obligation, we can talk. A week after the confrontation, I came home from work to find an envelope taped to my apartment door. Inside was a handwritten note in my father's distinctive block lettering. We are no longer family. Do not contact us unless you are ready to help Stephanie. I stood in my hallway, the paper trembling in my hands as the full weight of what was happening crashed down on me. Over $30,000 money I had saved carefully over years of hard work. My family had decided I was disposable. I called Audrey, barely able to speak through the shock. She came over immediately, holding me while the numbness gave way to grief, then anger, then a profound sadness that seemed to have no bottom. They cannot be serious, she kept saying. They will come around. But as I fell asleep that night on my couch, Audrey watching over me with worried eyes, a part of me knew that something fundamental had shifted. The family I thought I had was not the family that actually existed, and I had no idea how to process that betrayal. The first week of being familyless was the hardest. I would catch myself reaching for my phone to text my mom about something trivial, only to remember the note taped to my door. I would see something that would make Dad laugh, and instinctively think to tell him before the reality crashed back. It was like experiencing a death, except the people I was grieving had chosen to walk away. At work, I went through the motions. I coded, I attended meetings, I nodded at appropriate times, but my mind was constantly churning over what had happened. Had I been wrong? Should I have just given Stephanie the money to keep the peace? Was family harmony worth $30,000? After 3 days of this fog, my team lead pulled me aside. "Take some personal days, Mason," he said kindly. "Whatever is going on, you need some time to process it." I took his advice and spent the next 2 days alternating between sleeping too much and staring at my ceiling, replaying every moment of that final confrontation. Audrey came by each evening after her hospital shift, bringing food I barely touched and reassurance I struggled to believe. "You did nothing wrong," she would insist, her nurse's eyes clinically assessing my deteriorating state. "They are being unreasonable and manipulative." On the 6th day, I mustered the courage to try one more time. I sent a carefully worded text to both parents. "I love you all and want to work through this. Can we please talk?" My father's reply came hours later. "You know what you need to do." That was it. No opening for discussion, no acknowledgement of my feelings, just a restatement of their ultimatum. Later that day, scrolling mindlessly through social media to distract myself, I saw a post from Stephanie with a photo of her and Ethan standing in an empty commercial space. The caption read, "Dreams becoming reality. Future home of the daily grind number. Entrepreneur life number blessed." I stared at the phone, a sick feeling growing in my stomach. They were moving forward. Somehow they had secured the funding without me. I scrolled through the comments and saw one from my mother. "So proud of you, sweetie. Your father and I believe in you completely." A few clicks led me to another discovery, a crowdfunding page for the daily grind, with a $5,000 goal far below what they actually needed, that had been maxed out primarily by contributions from relatives. The page mentioned nothing about the true startup costs, or the fact that my parents had taken out a second mortgage on their house to fund the rest, a fact I would learn only later. In the campaign video, Stephanie talked about bootstrapping and taking a chance on myself, as if she was financing this entirely through her own hard work. The comment section was filled with praise for her entrepreneurial spirit. The narrative had been completely rewritten, with no mention of the $30,000 demanded from me or the family rupture it had caused. It was around this time that I finally called Grandpa Harold. I had been avoiding it, partly from shame and partly from not wanting to drag him into family drama at his age, but I needed someone who might understand. To my surprise, he did not seem shocked when I explained what had happened. "I wondered when you would call," he said, his voice steady as always. "I have been hearing a rather different version of events from your parents." "Let me guess," I said bitterly. "I am the selfish son who abandoned his sister in her time of need." "Something like that," he confirmed, though I suspected there was more to the story. I told him everything: the ambush loan request, the lack of business planning, the ultimatum, the note on my door. He listened without interruption, and when I finished, he sighed deeply. "This is not the first time something like this has happened in our family," he said, surprising me. "Your father and his sister went through something similar years ago before you were born. Different circumstances, same pattern." "What happened?" "Your aunt wanted to start a clothing boutique. Your grandmother, my late wife, thought it was a wonderful idea and pressured everyone to contribute. Your father gave her a significant amount of money despite having a new baby, you, and a mortgage. The business failed within a year, and the money was never repaid. It caused a rift between your father and me when I pointed out it had been a foreseeable outcome." I sat with this information, trying to process that this pattern had deeper roots than I realized. "So why is Dad doing the same thing to me now?" I asked. "Sometimes," Grandpa said thoughtfully, People who have been hurt try to validate their past choices by recreating them. Your father probably believes that supporting Stephanie unconditionally is what family does because that is what he did, even though it hurt him. What should I do? For now, take care of yourself. This is not your mess to fix. Grandpa's support was a lifeline, but it did not immediately ease the isolation. I started seeing a therapist the following week, trying to work through the complicated emotions of being rejected by my own family, over a boundary I had every right to set. Dr. Mercer, my therapist, helped me name what I was experiencing: family scapegoating. In some family systems, she explained, one member becomes the repository for all the negative feelings. You have become the problem because you refuse to participate in an unhealthy pattern. That does not make you wrong. Meanwhile, Audrey became my rock. She fielded concerned messages from mutual friends who had heard rumors about family drama. She made sure I ate regularly and got out of the apartment occasionally. She never pushed me to just give in to keep the peace, understanding that some bridges once crossed changed the landscape forever. About 3 weeks after the note appeared on my door, I ran into my Uncle Phil at the grocery store. He was my father's younger brother, less involved in family matters, but generally good-natured. His discomfort was palpable as we stood between the produce and dairy sections. "Mason, hey," he said, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "Have not seen you around lately." "Yeah, I have been busy," I replied, not wanting to create more drama. "Look," he said, lowering his voice, "I do not want to get in the middle, but what happened with you and Stephanie? Your parents are telling everyone you abandoned her when she needed help, but that does not sound like you." The knot in my stomach tightened. Did they mention they demanded I give her $30,000 with no business plan, and when I refused they left a note saying we are no longer family? Uncle Phil's eyes widened. No, they definitely did not mention that part. I gave him the abbreviated version, watching his expression shift from confusion to concern. "That is not right," he said finally. "I am sorry, Mason. I had no idea." After we parted ways, I realized the story being told to the extended family painted me as the villain, the selfish brother who refused to help his struggling sister follow her dreams. It was easier than admitting they had made financial decisions based on emotion rather than logic, or that they had delivered an ultimatum no parent should ever give a child. A few days later, I received a gold-embossed invitation to Grandpa Harold's 75th birthday celebration, to be held at his home the following month. I almost declined, knowing my parents and Stephanie would be there, but the handwritten note at the bottom gave me pause. "Your presence is not requested, Mason. It is required. Trust me, you will want to be there. Grandpa." When I called him to ask what he meant, his voice carried a hint of mischief I had rarely heard. "Let's just say I have been doing some thinking about family legacy and what it means to truly support the people you love," he said. "And I think it is time for a little clarity in our family. Will you trust me on this?" Despite my reservations, I found myself agreeing. "I will be there." "Good," he said. "And Mason, sometimes the hardest roads lead to the most necessary destinations. Remember that." As I hung up, I could not shake the feeling that Grandpa Harold was planning something significant. The thought brought both anxiety and a small, unfamiliar spark of something I had not felt in weeks: hope. 2 weeks before Grandpa's birthday celebration, he invited me to his house for lunch, just the two of us. His colonial-style home sat on 2 acres in a quiet suburb, modest from the outside, but impeccably maintained. As always, he answered the door himself, despite having reached an age where most people would be slowing down. Come in," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. Maria made her famous pot roast before she left for the day. Maria was his housekeeper of 15 years, a warm woman who treated Grandpa like family and me like a favorite nephew. The house smelled incredible, a comforting mix of slow-cooked beef and fresh-baked bread that momentarily pushed aside the constant anxiety I had been carrying. We ate in his sunroom, overlooking the meticulously kept garden. After some small talk about my work and Audrey, Grandpa set down his fork and fixed me with his clear blue eyes. "I owe you an apology, Mason," he said seriously. "For what?" "For not stepping in sooner. I have watched this dynamic in our family for too long without addressing it directly. Your father has repeated patterns from his own upbringing, and now Stephanie is doing the same. I shifted uncomfortably. It is not your responsibility to fix this, Grandpa. Perhaps not, he agreed. But as the patriarch of this family, I do have a responsibility to uphold certain values that seem to have gotten lost along the way. He rose and walked to his desk in the corner of the room, retrieving a leather portfolio. I want to show you something. Inside were documents, financial statements, property deeds, investment portfolios, far more extensive than I had ever imagined. Your father believes I live comfortably on my pension and some modest savings, Grandpa explained. He has never been particularly interested in financial matters beyond maintaining appearances. What he does not know is that my banking career was considerably more successful than I let on, and my investments have performed exceptionally well. I scanned the documents, my eyes widening at the figures. Grandpa Harold was not just comfortable, he was wealthy. Very wealthy. Why are you showing me this? Because you need to understand what is at stake, he said simply. And because I want you to know that I have been watching the coffee shop situation with great interest. He pulled out another folder, this one containing what looked like private investigator reports, financial analyses, and photographs. You had Stephanie investigated? I asked, shocked. Not Stephanie, he corrected. Ethan, and the business. I wanted to know exactly what I was dealing with before I made any decisions. The reports painted a troubling picture. Ethan Rodriguez had been involved in 3 failed business ventures in the past 5 years, a fitness app, a meal delivery service, and a digital marketing agency. Each had followed the same pattern: enthusiastic launch mismanagement failure within 18 months. He had left behind unpaid vendors and disgruntled investors each time. More concerning were the current financials for the daily grind. They had already spent nearly $40,000 on unnecessary high-end fixtures and equipment before even finalizing permits. The location they had secured was charging premium rent, but was actually 2 blocks away from the prime foot traffic area. Their projected revenue was based on charging $8 for a basic coffee in a neighborhood where the average was $4. They are going to fail, I said quietly, the reality sinking in. And they have used Mom and Dad's money to do it. Yes, Grandpa confirmed. Your parents took out a second mortgage on their house, $75,000. They are telling themselves it is an investment in Stephanie's future, but based on these projections that money will be gone within 8 months with nothing to show for it. I felt sick. My parents were in their late 50s with retirement on the horizon. They could not afford to lose that kind of money. Why are you telling me this? I asked. What can I do about it now? Nothing yet, Grandpa said, gathering the papers. But there is something I can do, which brings me to my birthday party and the 3 gift boxes you have been wondering about. He outlined his plan then, a public reckoning that would force everyone to confront the unhealthy patterns that had taken root in our family. It was bold, potentially explosive, and would change family dynamics forever. Are you sure about this? I asked when he finished explaining. It could cause a permanent rift. The rift is already there, he pointed out. They disowned you over money, Mason. Money they then proceeded to waste on an ill-conceived venture. What we are doing is bringing truth into the open, where it can finally be addressed. He showed me the contents of the 3 boxes he had prepared, one for Stephanie and Ethan, one for my parents, and one for me. Each contained carefully selected documents and items that would tell a part of the larger story. My attorney Walter will be there to handle the legal aspects, Grandpa added. He has been my friend for 40 years and understands exactly what we are doing and why. As I left his house that afternoon, I felt both dread and a strange sense of relief. Whatever happened at the birthday party, the secrets and manipulations would finally be exposed. Whether that would heal our family or fracture it permanently remained to be seen. The night before the party, I called Audrey in a moment of panic. What if this makes everything worse? I asked her. What if this just confirms to them that I am the villain? Mason, she said gently, you are not responsible for how they react to the truth. That is on them. You deserve to have your side of the story told, and your grandfather deserves to allocate his resources according to his values. Whatever happens tomorrow, remember that you acted with integrity throughout this entire situation. Her words steadied me. As I hung up, I realized that regardless of what happened at Grandpa's party, I had already gained something valuable from this painful experience, a clearer understanding of my own worth and the kind of relationships I deserved. Tomorrow would bring whatever it would bring. I was as ready as I could be. Grandpa's 75th birthday celebration was scheduled for 2 p.m. on a perfect June Saturday. I arrived 30 minutes early, as he had requested, parking my car at the far end of the circular driveway, already filling with familiar vehicles. My heart hammered as I recognized my parents' silver SUV and Stephanie's red compact. Grandpa met me at the side door looking sharp in a navy suit with a gold tie pin, a gift from my grandmother before she passed. "Right on time," he said with an approving nod. "Walter is already here in my study. The boxes are prepared." Walter Simmons was a distinguished-looking man with silver hair and the calm demeanor of someone who had seen every type of family drama over his long legal career. He shook my hand firmly. "Your grandfather speaks very highly of you, Mason," he said. "What he is doing today takes courage, but he believes it is necessary." We reviewed the plan one final time, and then it was time to join the gathering. Grandpa's spacious living and dining rooms had been transformed for the occasion with elegant flower arrangements and a catered spread that would have impressed even the most discerning guests. About 30 family members and close friends were already mingling, champagne flutes in hand. The moment I entered the room, I felt it, the shift in atmosphere, the subtle turning of heads, the whispered comments. Uncle Phil gave me a sympathetic nod from across the room. Aunt Margaret, always the family gossip, practically gave herself whiplash trying to see if I would approach my parents. Mom and Dad stood near the fireplace, pointedly looking away when they noticed me. Dad's posture stiffened, and Mom busied herself with her champagne glass. Stephanie, holding court near the gift table with Ethan at her side, shot me a glare that could have frozen hell. Rather than approach them, I made my way around the room, greeting other relatives and family friends. Many seemed surprised by my presence, confirming my suspicion that the narrative of my abandonment had been widely circulated. "Mason, we have not seen you at family gatherings lately," my cousin Jessica said, her eyes curious. "I have been focused on work," I replied neutrally, "but I would never miss Grandpa's 75th. After about 20 minutes of this uncomfortable dance, Grandpa Harold clinked his glass for attention. The room quieted as all eyes turned to him. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate this milestone with me," he began, his voice strong despite his age. 75 years is a long time to live, and it gives a man perspective on what truly matters. He spoke briefly about his late wife, his career, and the joy of watching his family grow. Then his tone shifted slightly. "As many of you know, family has always been my highest priority. Not just the idea of family, but the substance of it. The values, the mutual respect, the integrity that binds us together across generations." I noticed my father shifting uncomfortably, perhaps sensing the turn in conversation. "Today I want to do something a bit different," Grandpa continued. "Instead of receiving gifts, I would like to give some. Specifically, I have prepared special gifts for 3 members of my family who are at a crossroads." He nodded to Walter, who stepped forward with the first wrapped box, medium-sized, wrapped in silver paper with a blue ribbon. "First for my granddaughter Stephanie and her partner Ethan." Stephanie stepped forward, beaming at being singled out. She took the box with a triumphant glance in my direction, clearly expecting something valuable. Ethan hovered at her shoulder as she unwrapped it. Inside was a leather-bound folder with gold embossing that read, "The Daily Grind, a Reality Check." Stephanie's smile faltered as she opened it. "What is this?" she asked, her voice suddenly small. "That," Grandpa said calmly, "is a comprehensive analysis of your coffee shop business, including market research, financial projections based on actual data, and a detailed history of Ethan's previous business ventures." The room went silent. Ethan's face drained of color. "I do not understand," Stephanie said, though her expression suggested she was beginning to. "Page 3 might be particularly illuminating," Grandpa suggested, "where you will find documentation of how the $40,000 already spent has been allocated, including the $8,000 espresso machine that was purchased, but delivered to Ethan's apartment, not the shop. Location." Gasps rippled through the room. Ethan took a step back. That was we were storing it temporarily, he stammered. Perhaps Grandpa nodded. Just as you were temporarily storing the funds from your previous investors before those businesses also failed. He turned to the wider room. I believe in supporting family, but true support sometimes means preventing harm, rather than enabling it. Stephanie has tremendous potential, but this business as currently conceived and managed is not viable. The folder contains proof of that assessment from 3 independent business consultants. Stephanie's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. Real ones this time, not the performative ones she had used so effectively in the past. Before she could respond, Walter stepped forward with the second box smaller, wrapped in gold paper. For my son Robert and his wife Diana, Grandpa announced, looking directly at my parents. Dad hesitated before stepping forward to take the box, Mom trailing behind him. The unwrapping was painfully slow, the room collectively holding its breath. Inside was a small wooden frame containing the note they had left on my door. We are no longer family. Do not contact us unless you are ready to help Stephanie. Beneath it was a copy of their second mortgage documents, along with projected retirement calculations showing the impact of their $75,000 loan. What is the meaning of this? Dad demanded, his face flushing red. The meaning is simple, Grandpa replied evenly. Choices have consequences. You chose to disown your son for refusing to fund a business that my investigation shows has a 97% chance of failure within 1 year. You chose to leverage your retirement security on that same business. And you chose to create a false narrative about Mason to the rest of the family. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Harold, this is a private family matter. Is it? Grandpa cut in. Because the note disowning my grandson seems quite definitive and public, and the story you have been telling about him abandoning his sister has certainly made the rounds. He turned to address the stunned gathering. For those who have heard only one version of recent events, let me clarify. Mason did not refuse to help his sister out of selfishness. He refused to invest $30,000 in a business with no viable plan run by someone with a history of financial irresponsibility and a partner with a track record of failed ventures. He offered alternative forms of support, all of which were rejected. For this reasonable boundary, he was cut off from his family completely. The silence in the room was deafening. I stood still, feeling dozens of eyes shifting between me and my parents, the narrative they had constructed crumbling in real time. Finally, Walter brought forward the third box, the largest, wrapped in simple blue paper. And for my grandson, Mason, Grandpa, said, his voice warming as he looked at me. With slightly shaking hands, I unwrapped the box. Inside was a leather portfolio similar to the one Grandpa had shown me in his study 2 weeks earlier, but with my name embossed on the cover. As I opened it, Grandpa addressed the room. Mason has demonstrated the values I hold most dear: integrity, responsibility, and genuine care for others' well-being. While it might seem supportive to give someone whatever they ask for, true support often means helping people make sound decisions, even when those decisions are difficult. I scanned the documents in the portfolio, my eyes widening. It contained trust documents naming me as the primary trustee of Grandpa's estate, along with educational trusts for future generations, and a significant immediate gift to help with my house down payment. I have restructured my estate, Grandpa announced. The bulk of my assets will be held in a family trust with Mason as the primary trustee. The trust includes provisions for education, health care, and genuine entrepreneurial efforts that include proper planning and accountability. He looked pointedly at my parents. What it does not include is bailouts for impulsive decisions or funding for businesses with no viable plan. Those are not gifts of love. They are enablements of future failure. The room erupted in murmurs. Stephanie was openly crying now, while Ethan had mysteriously disappeared from the party. My parents stood frozen, the frame still in my father's hands, as the full implications of what had just happened sank in. I caught Uncle Phil's eye across the room. He gave me a subtle nod of understanding and what looked like respect. Other relatives were whispering, reassessing the family drama in light of these revelations. I believe Grandpa said, raising his voice slightly to be heard above the murmurs, that it is time for some honest conversations in this family. Walter will be available to answer any questions about the trust arrangements, and I hope that after some reflection, we can begin to rebuild relationships on healthier foundations." With that, he clinked his glass once more. "Now I believe there is cake waiting to be served. 75 candles wait for no man." The party awkwardly shifted back to birthday mode, though the atmosphere had fundamentally changed. I stood by the window portfolio clutched in my hands, unsure what to do next. I did not have to wonder long. My father approached, his face unreadable, my mother a few steps behind him. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "Not here, not now, but soon." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As they walked away, Grandpa appeared at my side, placing a steady hand on my shoulder. "The truth is rarely comfortable," he said softly, "but it is always necessary." I looked around the room at my family, some avoiding my eyes, others watching with newfound curiosity, all of them processing what they had just witnessed. Whatever happened next, the carefully constructed narrative had been dismantled. The real healing, if it was possible, could finally begin. The immediate aftermath of Grandpa's birthday revelation was both chaotic and oddly silent. Most guests made polite excuses and left early, eager to escape the tangible tension hanging in the air. Stephanie disappeared with a tearful dash to her car, while my parents lingered awkwardly, making stiff small talk with relatives while avoiding both me and Grandpa Harold. As the last guests filtered out, Grandpa found me on the back patio, staring at the sunset. "Are you all right?" he asked, settling into the chair beside me. "I honestly do not know," I admitted. "Part of me feels vindicated, and part of me feels terrible about how public it all was." "Sometimes," he said thoughtfully, "private conversations allow harmful patterns to continue. Some truths need witnesses to be truly heard." Before I could respond, the patio door opened, and my parents stepped out. They looked smaller, somehow less certain than I had ever seen them. "Could we have a moment with Mason, Dad?" asked Grandpa, his voice lacking its usual authority. Grandpa looked to me for confirmation. When I nodded, he squeezed my shoulder and went inside, leaving me alone with the parents who had disowned me just weeks earlier. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Mom broke the silence, her voice wavering. "We did not know you had been completely cut off," she said. "The note was your father's idea, but it was meant to be temporary, to make you reconsider." "Tu manipulat me," I corrected quietly. Dad flinched but did not argue. "We thought we were doing the right thing, supporting Stephanie's dream. By risking your retirement, by disowning your son, by spreading a false narrative to the entire family." The questions came out sharper than I intended, years of built-up frustration, finally finding voice. "We were wrong," Dad said, the words seeming to physically pain him, "about many things. It was not exactly the apology I deserved, but it was more acknowledgement than I had ever received from him." "What happens now?" I asked. "We need time," Mom said, "to think about everything that came to light today, about the coffee shop, about our relationship with you, about all of it." "I need time too," I told them honestly. "What you did hurt me deeply. I cannot just pretend it never happened." They nodded, understanding that reconciliation, if it came, would not be immediate. As they turned to leave, Dad paused. "Your grandfather," he said haltingly, "has always seen something special in you, I think. I think today I finally understood why. It was the closest thing to a compliment my father had given me in years." In the weeks that followed, the family landscape shifted in ways both subtle and profound. Stephanie's coffee shop plans imploded spectacularly when Ethan disappeared with what remained of their startup funds. The investigation Grandpa had initiated revealed that he had been siphoning money from the beginning, including selling that expensive espresso machine for cash. Stephanie was devastated, but for perhaps the first time, it was a genuine devastation rather than a performative one. With the business facade shattered and Ethan gone, she was forced to confront not just his betrayal, but her own pattern of magical thinking and financial irresponsibility. 2 weeks after the birthday party, she showed up at my apartment alone, and without the usual dramatic entrance. "I do not expect you to forgive me," she said, sitting stiffly on the edge of my couch, "but I needed to tell you that you were right. About everything." We talked for hours that day, really talked perhaps for the first time as adults. She confessed her jealousy of my stability, her fear of failure, her pattern of using charm and drama to avoid facing consequences. I shared my resentment at always being expected to be the responsible one, my hurt at being taken for granted, my frustration at being cast as the villain for setting reasonable boundaries. "I do not know how to fix any of this," she admitted, as evening fell. "The shop is gone. Ethan took what was left of Mom and Dad's money. My credit is ruined. And I have treated my brother like an ATM instead of a person." "You start by making different choices," I told her. "One day at a time." Stephanie enrolled in community college the following month, starting with basic business and accounting classes. She moved back home with our parents, got a job as a barista at an established coffee shop, and began the slow process of rebuilding her financial life from scratch. My relationship with my parents took longer to mend. The note they had left on my door had cut deeper than they seemed to realize, revealing a conditional love I had always suspected but never wanted to confirm. We started with occasional phone calls, then graduated to brief coffee meetings, each interaction careful and measured. "Your grandfather's intervention was illuminating," Dad admitted during one such meeting about 2 months after the birthday party. "He made me see that I have been repeating patterns from my own past." He shared more about the failed clothing boutique, how he had felt pressured to support his sister financially, despite his own misgivings, how the loss had strained his early years of marriage and parenthood. "I think I needed to believe it was the right choice," he confessed. "So when Stephanie needed money, I convinced myself that supporting her unconditionally was what family does, even if it meant pressuring you to do the same." Mom had her own revelations. "I always thought Stephanie needed more support because she was sensitive, creative. I did not see how we were actually holding her back by never letting her experience consequences." Their second mortgage remained a financial burden, though less catastrophic than it might have been. Grandpa Harold, true to his principles about not enabling poor decisions but still caring about family, helped them refinance on the condition they attend financial counseling. My relationship with Audrey deepened through all of this. She had seen me at my lowest and stayed steadfast, offering support without trying to fix everything. 6 months after Grandpa's birthday party, I used part of his gift to put a down payment on a modest house and asked her to move in with me. She said yes. The trust responsibility Grandpa had given me was both an honor and a weighty obligation. I worked closely with Walter to understand the legal and ethical dimensions of being a trustee, determined to uphold the values Grandpa had entrusted me to protect. "The point is not to control the family through money," Grandpa explained during one of our now weekly fishing trips. "The point is to ensure that money serves the family's true well-being, not its impulses." It was nearly 6 months after the birthday confrontation when we had our first full family dinner. Grandpa hosted at his house, neutral territory for all of us. The conversation was sometimes stilted, sometimes raw, but fundamentally different from our interactions before. Stephanie talked about her classes and what she was learning about business fundamentals. Dad discussed the financial counseling insights without defensiveness. Mom mentioned a support group she had joined for parents learning to establish healthier boundaries with adult children. As we finished dessert, Grandpa raised his glass in a toast. "To growth," he said simply. "May we always be brave enough to learn." Later, as Audrey and I drove home, she asked if I had regrets about how everything had unfolded. "I regret the pain," I said after thinking about it, "but not the boundaries. Standing firm on what I knew was right was the hardest thing I have ever done, and ultimately the most necessary." The experience had changed me profoundly. I had learned that true family is built on respect and honest communication, not obligation and manipulation. I had discovered my own capacity to withstand rejection rather than compromise my principles. And I had found that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no, even when every cultural and familial pressure pushes you to say yes. 1 year after Grandpa's 75th birthday party, we gathered again to celebrate his 76th. The family dynamic was different now, more authentic, less performative. Stephanie brought her community college dean's list certificate instead of a get-rich-quick scheme. My parents talked about their upcoming retirement with clear-eyed planning instead of magical thinking. And I brought Audrey, now wearing an engagement ring. As the party wound down, Grandpa and I stood on his back porch watching fireflies light up the summer evening. "You know," he said, "when I was your age, I thought family was about loyalty at all costs. It took me decades to learn that true family loyalty means wanting what is best for each other, not what is easiest." I nodded, understanding in a way I never could have before experiencing it myself. "Thank you," I said simply, "for seeing the truth when no one else would." He smiled, the lines around his eyes deepening. "Truth is like those fireflies, Mason. Sometimes you have to wait for darkness to see it clearly." As we head into the future, I carry these lessons with me: that standing firm on your principles can be painful but necessary, that true support sometimes means saying no, and that family, real family, is built on respect, not obligation. What about you? Have you ever had to stand your ground against family pressure? How did you handle it? Drop your experiences in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about navigating life's difficult relationships. Remember, sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that ultimately lead to healing and growth. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you courage in your own journey toward authentic relationships.